How do we move forward in our recovery? What does it look like for us to start taking steps to start moving from hurting to healing? And are there some things that we can do that help us stay on that process? Well, Hebrews chapter 12 gives us some really interesting insight into some things that may help us keep moving a little further down the road of healing.
Recovery can be hard, but it's worth it. There is hope knowing we can find healing one step at a time with Jesus and healthy community. Whether you're struggling with a hurt or a hang-up or a habit, you're not alone. During this podcast, we share real stories, practical tools, and powerful truths that inspire you to keep moving forward. No matter where you are on your journey, there's hope ahead. So stick with us as we walk this path together through Celebrate Recovery.
Well, hey everyone, welcome back to Hope in Recovery, a Fellowship Celebrate Recovery podcast, where we talk life change stories and recovery conversations to keep us moving a little bit further down our road of healing and hope as we grow in deeper relationship with God and others. I'm grateful to be here with you all today. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus. I struggle with depression, food issues, sexual addiction, and grief. My name's Andy, and I've got the great privilege of being a part of our staff team for Celebrate Recovery here at Fellowship Bible Church of Northwest Arkansas, and I'm super glad that you're with us today. One of the questions that I've been kind of wrestling with is what does it look like for us to keep moving forward, to keep taking steps, to start getting a little bit of traction in our recovery? And are there things that we can do to help aid us in that? And as I've been reading through and reminded of a couple passages of Scripture, one in particular has kind of come up to me. It's Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. And we've talked about it here, but a couple things in here I wanted to draw out today. Before we jump into it, just wanted to say, hey, if you are getting something out of this, like always, please leave a comment or a like or a subscribe, whether you're watching on YouTube or whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts or anywhere in between. We're super glad that you're here, and we love to hear your feedback on this. But yeah, this idea of what are we doing in our recovery, and how do we start moving forward in it? As I was thinking about that idea, Hebrews 12 came to mind. I just want to read Hebrews 12, verses 1 through the beginning of verse 2, and there's just so much jam-packed in there. It says this: "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us." It goes on to say, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. You know, this passage in Hebrews is such a vivid picture of what it looks like for us to walk with Jesus, to run this race, this journey with Jesus in our life. And I think it's so applicable to the recovery context because recovery at its heart is about us learning to walk in deeper relationship with Jesus as we seek to walk the path that He's laid out for us in this life. And if you have a pulse, then you've probably realized that there is just days and moments and seasons and things that pop up in our life that make it difficult to walk that journey. And as we walk that journey, we encounter things that hold us back on it. And recovery is really just the process of us growing with Jesus. That's what we do in our step study groups and in our open share groups as we meet with our sponsors and accountability partners, as we come together to worship and hear life change stories and teachings. Celebrate Recovery is built around us building deeper connection with Jesus and others, and in living in authentic community together. And I love how that's actually a really biblical thing, and we find it here in Hebrews chapter 12. It goes on to say this, or it starts off saying this: therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. And what is that referring to? Well, it's always good whenever you're reading the Bible to kind of look at what's coming before the passage you're reading and what's coming after it so you understand the context. And so right before this part of Hebrews chapter 12 is Hebrews chapter 11, where it talks about the giants of the faith. These people from the Old Testament and the New Testament that ran towards Jesus and ran the race well. And then it starts off saying, hey, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, all of these other people that have walked the faith before us, and maybe some that are walking it with us too, it says, let us run this race. And a couple things. It marks out the reality that the race that we run is not an individual race. It says, let us throw off everything that entangles us. It says, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. This is language that is obviously very plural, but it's inclusive. There's a community that's involved here. You know, one of the biggest dangers to our recovery is isolation. In fact, I know for me, when I think about my pornography addiction, it grew in my aloneness. And the longer I decided to stay alone, the harder it got. You know, healing isn't found in isolation, it's found in community. And one of the things that it's saying right here in Hebrews is we need each other. I've heard it said by a friend of mine in CR that my recovery is a group project. I can't do it by myself. And so when I think about, man, if I find myself in my recovery and I'm stuck and I don't know what to do, well, we have to do this thing together. We have to be intentional about bringing other people alongside us. One of the biggest lies that I believed is that I'm the only one that struggled and I'm the only one. There's nobody else that's going to understand, but there couldn't be a bigger lie when it came to me struggling with my stuff. And it couldn't be a bigger lie than now today as I deal with things that come up. We are in this together, not alone. And so that's a good question for us to ask. Are we doing this recovery thing together? The longer I'm trying to do it by myself, the harder it's going to be. So are we doing this thing together? We're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. We are running this race together. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. And so are we doing this thing together? The second thing that it's marked out there that I love is that it's not just together, but there's movement. And I know sometimes in my stuff that I've felt just kind of stuck and kind of paralyzed with where I'm at. And one of the reasons why I stayed paralyzed is because I was afraid to name the things that were going on in my life. And that if I wasn't willing to be honest about those things, to name those things and to focus on those things, there wasn't going to be any movement in my recovery. And in this passage in Hebrews, it says this: let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And so that throw off, it feels like a violent throwing off. There's an intentional, deliberate act where I am trying to throw off what? Things that hinder me and things that entangle me. And there's two things in there: everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And I think there was a misunderstanding that I had between the reality of those two things. The first, everything that hinders, and the sin that it so easily entangles. For me, it was far easier to see the sin that so easily entangles. Oftentimes when we think about that phrase, we think about the behaviors that are above the surface. We think about the things, for me, it was my pornography addiction. It was my unhealthy anger that I used as a weapon. It was my struggles with alcohol, the ways that I hurt people in relationships, like those things that were above the surface. And I came into recovery thinking, man, I need to if I can just get rid of all of the things that are above the surface, if I can take the behaviors that are visible and make sure that those things stop happening, then I'm good. And that is a part of recovery. A part of recovery is we do want to cease the broken, sinful, unhelpful patterns of dealing with this life. But what I had to realize in my recovery is that my pornography addiction was not the problem. My pornography addiction was my solution to my problem. It wasn't a good solution, but it was what I tried to use to deal with life on life's terms. And so it is important. Part of recovery is us recovering from the things that are ruling our life. But if I'm just focusing on the behavior, I'm not going to see the movement that I want to see. Actually, me trying to focus on managing the behavior still keeps me enslaved to the behavior. But there's another thing that it says. It also says everything that hinders. So there's a distinction. There's things that pop up in our life, these behaviors that hold us back, that entangle us. But then there's also these weights, these encumbrances, these burdens, which, by the way, that everything that hinders in the Greek, when that was written, that's actually what that means. A weight, an encumbrance, a burden. You see, in this life, we don't just have habits that we're dealing with, these faulty ways of dealing with life. We also have hang-ups that have developed, these faulty core beliefs in the way that we view ourselves and God and others. But then we also have hurts that have stacked up in our life. So much of what I've done in my life has been to try and numb out from the hurts that I've refused to deal with and address in my life. You see, all of us have a story, and all of us have pain in our story. And pain that is left unaddressed is going to be left unhealed. And unhealed pain, it will get infected, and it's going to start to fester, and we'll start seeing it in our life. And so the question before us is if we actually want to move, if we actually want to start moving towards healing, I have to name the things that I need to heal from. And so, can I be honest, as I'm bringing other people and God into it, what are the sins that are entangling me? And as I understand the sins that are entangling me, can I understand the other weights and burdens that have allowed those things to develop in my life? And until I'm willing to be rigorously honest about those things, it's going to be hard for me to heal from them. Now, probably the most important part is next. It's the goal that we're running towards. We'll talk about that as soon as we come back from the break. All right, we're back talking about what does this recovery process look like? How do we engage in it and start to move through it? Talked in Hebrews 12 the importance that we do this thing together. But it's not just that we're doing it together, but there's also some movement that we're trying to move towards healing in our life. We're starting to lean into actually taking the risk to name the things that are holding us back. But as we name the things that are holding us back, we don't do so just to be vulnerable and honest with that. The goal of vulnerability is not vulnerability. The goal of vulnerability is recovery. The goal of us being honest about it is so that we can bring those things to the God that heals us and start living in the way that he wants for us. You see, Jesus, when he died for us, one of the things that he said in his teaching up while he was here on earth is that he came to give life and give it to the full. You see, we submit into this process. We bring Jesus into these things so that we can step into the abundance of life that he's promised us. And that's what we keep in mind. If we were just sitting together, just kind of navel gazing and talking about all the things wrong with us, but we did it without a goal, I don't know how much healing would happen, how much sustainable recovery would happen. You see, we're moving towards something. You see, it goes on. So we throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And it says, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. So there's a couple things in there. We're running towards Jesus. We're trying to do this thing together towards freedom, the freedom that's found only in Jesus. And what is that freedom marked by? Well, there's continual movement. There's perseverance. And that perseverance and movement is all focused on one goal: seeing Jesus and getting closer to him. You see, our true and lasting freedom is only found in Jesus. Our true and lasting healing is only found in Jesus. This race that has been marked out for us is the race that Jesus marked out for you and I. And so I love this idea too that we, again, let us run. So we're doing this together and we're running together with perseverance. You know, it's interesting thinking about that. Just as we run towards Jesus, we need each other. And I know for me, like, there's a difference between, like, whenever I go out for a run, there's a difference between me running with somebody else and me running alone. It's often harder to run alone. I often feel more tired and more in my own head. I have a lot more thoughts about quitting the run when I'm running by myself versus if I'm with somebody. You see, the presence of another person in our recovery helps us to grow in our perseverance. And as we have another person helping us grow in perseverance and holding our arms up as we're running this race together, it helps us to run further closer to Jesus. But it's important to know this too, that this race that is marked out for us, this unique plan and purpose, it's a real thing. You see, one of the lies that I had in the middle of my of my dysfunction is that, man, maybe I've messed up far too much for God to really have anything more for me. Maybe God wanted something really good for me, but I just blew it. But could it be the case that God loves us so much that he's not going to give up on us and he's going to continue writing our story, even in light of the mistakes that have happened? Could it be the case that, as it says in Philippians 1:6, that we can be confident that he who began a good work in us will carry it on to completion until Christ Jesus? You see, the good work that God has started in you and I, he plans to finish. And we get to spur one another towards the freedom that we get to walk in and live in Jesus together. And Jesus is the goal. You see, Jesus is the one that tells us, he's the one that gives us rest from striving. He gives us joy and abundant life. He's the one that wants to carry our burdens, and he's the one that loves us so incredibly much. I think of what it says in Matthew 11, and I know I quote this all the time on here, but it's so powerful, where Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." He goes on to say, "Take my yoke upon you, for I'm gracious and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls." You see, Jesus invites us to bear the burden of this life with him. And he says, the yoke that I'm going to give you, the thing I'm placing on your neck as you're walking this life, it's easy and light if you're walking next to me. That doesn't mean life is easy, but it means that we're walking with the one that allows us to actually endure and persevere. You see, the goal is to walk with Jesus and to run towards Jesus because he loves us. He's for us. His grace is enough for us. It's actually in our weaknesses that his power to change us is made perfect. We just got to bring our weaknesses to him. And we've got to determine to run together towards the freedom we find in him. Now, saying all of that, you might be wondering, like, okay, how does this apply to me as I'm thinking through this in my recovery journey right now? Well, some key things to ask is, am I doing this alone or with somebody? Because if I'm doing it alone, it's destined to fail. So do I have a sponsor? Do I have accountability partners? Am I going to group? Am I engaging in the community that's found in this incredible process of Celebrate Recovery? Am I going it alone or with somebody? Because with somebody is where we win. Second, am I being honest about the things that are holding me back? Am I being intentional to lean into the things that are happening? Am I trying to move into the things that have held me back? Am I trying to throw those things off? Am I being honest with the people that are around me? And then third, well, before we get to third, to this idea of honesty, it's important to know that as long as I hide my stuff, I'm never going to find the healing that I want. I can't walk in the light if I'm trying to keep things in darkness. I have to bring it out. And then third and finally, do I remember my why? Do I remember my goal? And is my goal to know Jesus and love him more? That's the ultimate goal of recovery. And in knowing Jesus and loving him more, I become a different person as I let him change me. So do I remember the goal? Am I being honest about the things blocking me from it? And am I running this alone or with other people? And those may be hard things. They're certainly hard for me. They were tough when I first came in, and it's a reminder to keep doing this together for me. And I just want to tell you, like, if those things are hard for you, it makes sense. It's not many of our natural inclinations to be honest about the things going on in our life, to focus and keep our eyes fixed on Jesus and to do it with other people. But if we're willing to take the necessary risks, God meets us in that place of surrender and humility. and he starts to bring healing and change. And what we'll see is that if we engage in that, we're going to start moving together toward freedom. Now, if you're looking for a place to plug in, if you're feeling like you're struggling today, I want to invite you, come check out Celebrate Recovery on a Friday night. Either at Fellowship Rogers or Fellowship Fayetteville. We meet every Friday at 7 o'clock. We would love to see you there. We would love to be the community of people that comes around you, that holds your arms up and runs this race with you towards Jesus. Because the reality is that even though the pain in our life is painful, even though the chaos in our life seems to be taking us out, the misery in our life is optional. And healing in Jesus really is possible. If he can do it for me, trust me, he can do it for you. And we hope that we'll see you sometime soon on a Friday night at 7 o'clock. Until then, we love you. God bless you. We'll talk to you next time.